Om Shanti. Welcome everyone to another session of EGY, Explorations of Gyan and Yoga. So, exploring Gyan and Yoga means to capture what it is and what it does and has done to an individual who has lived in spiritual study and practice for a long time. So in this weekend of EGY, we will explore what has happened to us on this empowering inner journey of trials, mysteries, and disillusionment. Our illusions got peeled away as we manifest our essential and indestructible core. The title for this weekend is called You Are the Message. And Sister Denise has sent a write-up on this. So this is the Murli Notes of 23rd of August. The message of religion has always been behavior modification. And the message of God is forget religion and forget behavior modification. God says, understand the meaning of ideas and think about this deeply. When you understand truth, having thought about it deeply, you derive happiness. A human being cannot renovate the world, but God can and does. Truth appears every cycle identically. You are receiving it again now. The old becomes new, and the new becomes old. The purpose of this is to enable you to claim your inheritance. You have a right to this. There is a dance of knowledge. There is a form of music inserted into your being through ideas, and you dance to this music. This inner dance to the music of truth restores you to your original condition. It describes the circling of the human condition, constantly circling, constantly passing through an identical set of changes, and having come full circle, it starts again. Care must be taken not to get trapped in the influence of a human being. Attraction, repulsion is the trap. Be dispassionate, detached, and the impartial witness. Be independent of sexuality. You are a non-material point of light, genderless, colorless, cultureless, independent of race, religion, patriarchal values, and attitudes. You came to earth in this state. Now you must return from whence you came in the same condition. Your mental and emotional illness derives from your perception that what you experience through sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste is real, and you allowed it to penetrate your being through your mind. In so doing, you got mentally and emotionally corrupted, disrupted, and disempowered. Most of you fail to appreciate this fact. You are asleep, unconscious about this reality. Now wake up. The time has come. Religious rituals exist showing concern that the soul should not revert to spiritual unawareness, but religious people fail to appreciate their significance. They think the sixth element of light is God. They cannot distinguish between physical and spiritual light. Once you are spiritually awake and informed, it makes no sense to revert to ritualistic behavior. The light of the soul is sustained by concentration upon the being of God, whose light and power is thus absorbed into you. God is speaking directly, saying, I am telling these things to you because I have great love for you. If the Shankaracharyas had not replaced the name of incorporeal God in the Gita with the name of Krishna, then the whole world would be able to recognize who is God. The incorporeal one is independent of the impact of karma because he has no body. He is establishing the civilization of heaven for you. So you should therefore claim it within the short time remaining before your death. You can gain this for the next 21 births. Through concentration upon the being of God, you will return to your original condition. You must live a life of purity at all levels. Your contact with God gives you the power to neutralize the magnetism of attraction and repulsion based on sense perception. This is called Yoga Siddhi, the power of yoga. You have to achieve complete control over your sexual urges through the power of yoga. That means neutralize the hormonal effects and become free from cultural norms. This will make you non-violent at all levels. The most valuable capacity is to perceive the mind of God with your mind. Then you can lock onto God and draw light and power and achieve Yoga Siddhi, the power of yoga. Om Shanti. Sister Denise.
Good morning, Sister Rose. Well, this is very interesting what you just read, and maybe a little bit, what shall I say? It is, I can say perhaps the message removed from its packaging. And this is what I'm trying to do with the Murli notes these days, is remove all the packaging so we get just the unadorned jewels, you can say. What I would like to do is to also read for you the Murli notes of today, because our issue, I think, in today's EGY is to really figure out what the message is, because it's really quite not clear. And yet the Murlis make it very, very clear. But what veils that clarity is, I think, the packaging. And the packaging is necessary so that people can relate to what's inside the packaging. And people who are in marketing know very well that without packaging, nobody will buy your stuff, at least not at that price. And you have to pay for the packaging. So the packaging is the context. So the context in which Baba talks to us is the context of the rituals, legends, myths, stories, practices, prayers, beliefs, behaviors, superstitions, and so many things that exist in India, and which you can find reflected in the pre-Columbian religions of South America, and early tribal beliefs of Africa, North America, Pacific Islands, and which also used to be there in Europe before the advent of Christianity. So people have greater or lesser contact with these old these old stories, these old legends, and they are really a link between our current situation and this message of God. The subject we're looking at today is be the message, but we can't be the message until we really catch what the message is. I think usually people think that the message is God has come, but I don't think that's the message. So let me go ahead and read you the Murli notes of today, and you will see that it's very similar to the Murli notes of August 23rd that you just heard. And every day God speaks to us and he tells us the same thing, which is the message, but he tells it in different ways. And he also tells it inside this packaging. So here it is, as far as I could manage without the packaging. So you have encountered God. There is only one being like this. You had the kingdom, you lost it, and now you are reclaiming it. You must understand that it is for those who had it previously in Bharat, Bharat meaning the old world of India. This had taken place in the previous Kalpa, and the signs, legends, festivals, and rituals of it abound in the land of Bharat today. The festivals are memorials of what is taking place here and now. And many people think the festivals are memorials of what happened in the Golden Age, but no, the festivals are all what happened now in the Confluence Age. The happiness of attaining God merges all forms of sorrow of the world, and your mind remains free, like when you are in recovery from an illness. To forget means that your mind is free from that person, place, or situation. Realizing and experiencing that you have God and that you are with God, and you see the world through his perspective, gives you such happiness that whatever normally dominates your mind and feelings is merged. The disillusionment, hardship, stress, and whatever you experience from people, your body, your relationships, and whatever is negative, alarming, fearsome, or stressful that you come to know about in the world normally dominates and overwhelms your mind, feelings, perception, and sense of what is real. In the same way, the awareness of having God with you eliminates the power of attraction of all that gives you pleasure, physical and relational happiness, because you see that it is ephemeral and deceptive. All this becomes merged by your connection and communion with God. When God and what he gives you floods your mind, then all that is negative vanishes from your perception. Meditation means to keep God with you in your mind, and thus you will remain free from the influence of sense perception and culture. This is meditation. Your awareness of the civilization and culture of the future, which God is preparing you for, also keeps you independent of the onslaught in your mind of the world of sorrows in which women are violated and abused. Obstacles and the sufferings of negative karma will continue only for a short while longer. Your Father gives you the patience to endure it. Settlement of karmic debts must be accomplished. Your contact with God and your awareness of the future world enables all this to become merged in your mind, and you will not experience the suffering of karma. This is how the remembrance of God destroys the consequences of negative karma. So these few sentences about yoga are very, very important aspect of the message. You must now no longer perform negative karma, otherwise you will have to go through even greater suffering and your status will be low. Your duty is to remain conscious of God and of the inheritance. The meaning of the expression, remember me, and your negative karma will be destroyed is this. Hold me in your mind such that your pain is merged, forgotten, and has no power to make you suffer. By doing this, you will enable others to get the point. There will be many obstacles, but do this anyway. The meaning of Manmana Bhav is to perceive God so clearly and keep him in your mind so steadily that your awareness of all forms of pain and suffering vanishes. They are burnt in the fire of your passion for God. This is the process of purification by which you are restored from Tamopradhan to Satopradhan. The process of deterioration is reversed. Whatever has deteriorated must be banished from your mind. Hold only God and what he has made new in your mind. This is the definition of renunciation for the soul. Physical renunciation is ineffective and belongs to the religious practices. The meaning of the verse, at the time of destruction, those with love for God in their understanding are victorious, and those with hatred for God experience being destroyed. It means that you must make the effort to keep God in your mind and be independent of sense perception of people, places, objects, and situations. If not, your perception, your mind, will be overwhelmed by destruction, and you will experience being destroyed. If you keep God in your mind, you will experience leaving your body and returning to silence with him and to him. So this is the message. And our issue is, okay, how do I be the message? Now, if we say these things to people unpackaged, unadorned by all kinds of softening processes, they will really not like it. You know, the expression, the inconvenient truth, and this is more than that. This is really the unbearable truth. So speaking about it is possible for us because we've understood, and we have process the knowledge such that it isn't unbearable. But saying these things to anyone who hasn't done that is definitely telling them something unbearable. So, of course, they will block it, and they have to block it. No other way. And as the ability, or our ability to really articulate the knowledge in all of its nakedness becomes possible for us, and we have to really do this so that we remain aware of how big it is, how important it is, and that really circumstances are quite urgent, and our ability to do this the way he wants us to do it has not yet reached the level that he wants. In fact, it's quite a long way from it. So this is why I think we need to really think about what he's asking us to do, which is second by second in our activities and interactions, we have to have two perceptions at all times. One is sense perception. We are aware of whatever we can see and touch and hear and all of this. So all of that perception of the material world is continuously coming into our minds through our sense perception. And we must not block it off. We have to have it there. It is there. And at the same time, kind of superimposed, these two realities have to be there. And so the other reality is the awareness of God, the remembrance of God. It's called the remembrance. And so it is said to us, you must perform your karma, all your karmas, in remembrance of God. And this is a very subtle balancing act. And it requires a lot of concentration, and it also requires detachment, a very strong capacity for detachment, and I think we have to say emotional neutrality regarding everything and everyone and every situation that we perceive through our sense organs. Because if we don't do that, it becomes very difficult to sustain the connection with Shiv Baba while all of these things are going on. Now, I believe and observe and think that very, very few BKs actually do this. I think that many will know what I'm talking about. You'll know how to do things in remembrance, and there are certain things that we practice doing in remembrance more than others. Like, for example, the process of preparing food in Baba's remembrance. I think people have that down quite well, because preparing food is relatively easy, doesn't require that much concentration, and you're preparing it for Baba, for offering Bhog, all of these things, and then eating in remembrance. So Baba had given us this practice to do because you eat every day, so you cook every day. And when you're doing this, you don't actually have to do anything else at the same time, but there are constant distractions. If you eat with someone or a group of people, then there's conversation, and your attention goes into the conversation. If you eat by yourself, still your attention can be drawn to other things that are on your mind that come up when you're by yourself, or you might be having something else going on at the same time as you read. You may be listening to something or watching something, or different things are there. But there is actually not enough practice of doing things in remembrance. For many people, the service activities are considered important and good because you're doing Baba's service, and you can give a talk about Gyan in remembrance. That's fairly normal to do that. You can, deliver a meditation commentary, and this will anyway put you into remembrance, so that's good. And these things will last for a short period of time. But the practice of doing things in remembrance when you're just in day-to-day ordinary activities is less. And people, while we have to do these two realities, one of acknowledging whatever is coming into our mind through sense perception, and the other of maintaining the awareness of Baba at the same time. That's two things. And also there's another set of two things in which those two things become one thing, and the other thing is slipping into body consciousness. So you have the awareness of what Baba is saying, which is called the confluence age. It's not a period of time, it's an actual state of awareness. And you flip between what we call soul consciousness and body consciousness. So the awareness of what you are and being independent of sense perception while perceiving it, and being in connection with God while all this is going on. This is called soul consciousness. And yet the capacity of the mind, not really the mind, the capacity of the intellect to keep the attention of the mind focused in this way and not get distracted and pulled by sense perception. Because when the mind is pulled by sense perception, then that is called body consciousness. So body consciousness is not really the five vices or something like that. That's a very crude definition of body consciousness. But it is given because when you are pulled by sense perception, then you are connected to the magnetic force of karma. And this is powerful. And so we need to really understand about karma. Now, we cannot really try to describe all these things to people because they really won't understand them. But what being the message is we have to do these things and allow people to observe us, and people do observe us. I think maybe you're not so aware of the extent to which you are observed. I mean, people say, or all the conspiracy theorists are very aware about how much whatever you're social media communication is somebody's reading it, somebody is monitoring it, and so you know that the so-called big brother is watching you all the time. That is there. And then there are hackers who try and interfere with that. And so all of this is going on behind the curtain, sort of electronic curtain. And people are aware of this, but they can't stay aware of it all the time. Some people are very aware of it, so they're careful what they say and do. And people get irritated by the fact that anything they do on the internet is responded to immediately by different commercial interests who interfere with their browsing, quite honestly. And so there's that. But just in actual practice, whatever we do is observed by whoever is around. Even you go for a walk, people look at each other, or you're in the shop shopping, you know, people look at each other. They get distracted, pulled by attraction and repulsion. And this is sense perception. It pulls you away from yourself. It pulls you away from your self-mastery. It pulls you away from your connection with yourself, the soul, and your connection with God, the Supreme Soul. And the consequences of that is that you are under the control of any power, any organization, any government, or whatever that wants to manipulate you through the media, or through advertising, or through news, or any of these things. And this is something we're really very aware of in COVID times, because there's this system of making everybody afraid and controlling people's behavior in these ways. And a lot of people are really quite irritated by it, with good reason. But I think that this interference with people is definitely here to stay. And this practice that Baba is giving us is something that enables us to lay claim to our minds so that they cannot be interfered with by people who have figured out how to do that by manipulating what we see and what we hear and all of that. And I don't know to what extent the electronic pollution is part of that, but it may well be. Now, our connection with God is that we withdraw our attention from sense perception to the point that things that are coming to us through our sense organs can be entirely neutralized, which means that we are able to be our own selves uninterfered with, and we are able to be in contact with God so that we can draw spiritual power into ourselves. And that makes us free. And that is something that people can feel. So to me, I feel that the message is to demonstrate what it means to be free and independent of the influence of people, places, objects, situations, and especially culture. Culture is a very subtle influence, and people are strongly I can even say indoctrinated by their culture, which becomes a filter through which they perceive what they perceive through sense perception. So a way of looking at it is that you have what you perceive through your sense organs, but you don't perceive it as it is. You perceive it through the veil of culture, which creates a distortion. And there are many things that make up this distortion of culture to such an extent that it becomes really quite difficult for people to be free to evaluate each other, to evaluate situations, and to make free choices. And this is something that those who realize it really don't like, of course, because freedom is, for a lot of people, a very, very key and important value. And in the teachings that Shiv Baba is giving us, what he's offering us is called Jivan Mukti, which means that you are in life, you are in your body, you have access to your sense perceptions, and you are absolutely free. Well, the only way that we can have this freedom is to be able to maintain these two dimensions of reality simultaneously at all times in the context of a bombardment of distractions that's constantly trying to pull us away from holding these two realities at the same time. The importance of this is that all human suffering occurs to a human being through this process. And human suffering is also classified as karmic accounts getting settled. And then there's also many forms of human suffering which are not karmic accounts getting settled, but when you come to know about different matters that are matters of suffering, things that horrify you or make you upset, when you see what's happening to other people, when it penetrates into your mind, it actually takes the form of a negative karma. And so one part of the message is do not take that in, because if you do, it's going to pollute your soul, and you're also going to have to suffer from the mistake of having allowed it in to your mind and heart. Your heart means your feelings. And people are too weak to handle this, and it overwhelms them. And when it reaches the extreme, what Baba calls destruction, you can't handle it, and you die in that condition. And he's saying, you don't have to do that. And the best way to be free from being pulled into that intense human suffering is to develop your capacity to be independent of sense perception and at will make it completely neutralized so that it has no impact on you and it becomes merged. Your experience of what it's like to be connected with God, in which you are absorbing that power, that light, that bliss that he lives in, it means that you can go onto his level. and you can be on his level even while all this stuff is going on. And this is the only way that you will be able to get through the extremes of negative situations and circumstances which is coming along without getting destroyed in the sense of so traumatized that you can't hold together anymore. So this is a very important piece of information, but it cannot be said to people directly because it's too horrible. And so the only way that this can be done is to do it, to to continue moment by moment and to practice with all the different kinds of difficulties, obstacles, negative situations that come along, and practice while this is happening to really be in your power, to really be connected with God, so that while all those things are going on, it doesn't actually do anything to you. And so people need to be able to see demonstrations of this. And that, I think, is what is meant by being the message. Now, I feel that a lot of BKs don't get it. And there is a lot of, you could say, watering down of the knowledge, making it nicey, and sugar and spicy, and pleasant, and pretty indistinguishable from the usual religious way of thinking about these things. So in that sense, I think that it's almost as if one has lost the plot. And this is understandable, because what Baba is really saying to us requires a very strong person to manage the reality of it. And I think there are some people who want everybody to think that Raj Yoga is something easy. I don't think it's very easy, because it is difficult to do this. And as I have mentioned a few times, the word sahaj also has this meaning that you're doing this in the context of people, places, things, situations which interfere with it, which is quite honestly the opposite of the meaning of easy. It's a very tricky to do this in that context of the world of the Iron Age, which is getting more and more difficult as the days go by. A lot of people think that if you do Raj Yoga, it's going to get easier and easier, but in reality, and Baba's very clear about this, it doesn't get easier. As you get better at it, then your circumstances get more difficult, because this is necessary to upgrade the level of your practice. If you don't have difficulties, if you don't have obstacles, then you will not have any incentive to make your practice more subtle and more focused and more persistent. So this is also there. What is really service? You see, this comes together with this question, what is the message? So service, I would say, is to, I think, to spread the vibration of your capacity to live on these two levels, because people pick up what's going on in the airwaves. And when our practice is very stable and steady, it becomes something that people can perceive in the dimension of thought. And the power of thought is extremely powerful. And when Baba says do service through the mind, I think it's something like this. But when your mind is scattered all over the place, then what you want people to pick up becomes imperceptible to them. But when your mind is not scattered and you remain in this practice of holding the remembrance of God while perceiving everything that comes into your mind through sense perceptions, but without getting influenced by it or pulled by it or limited or disempowered by it, and you keep this steady, then that becomes very clear for people to pick up from the, I can say, the thought space. And this is what Baba means by the subtle regions. And I think we need to understand the subtle regions better so that we can use the mind in a much more systematic way to enable this message to be picked up by people's minds. They will feel it in their sleep. They will sense it. They will start having those thoughts, getting those ideas. And that is, I think, service through the mind. So being the message and understanding what the message is. And also, I think, understanding the urgency of time, because, we've got real situations which are new. United States has just lost a war with extremists who are bent on a very destructive process, destroying, it's a very polarizing process, particularly the violence against women, which is going to be very, very extreme, which is a complete imbalance. And the climate is the melting of the ice, the disturbing of the weather patterns. This is getting very, very dangerous. And then the COVID and all of the restrictions that governments are imposing on their people, all of this is reaching a situation where it is dangerous, because this can push us into some form of war, overt war. And so that means time is running out. And so therefore, for us to be able to be the message is imminent and current, and saying all the things that we usually say is, I suppose I would have to say, obsolete. And now we must think about doing things like this. So let us stop for a moment and just have a few moments of quiet within. Think about being internally connected with Baba while everything is coming in through the sense perceptions, but neutralize that. Consciously let it be there, but it's not doing anything. It's not affecting you, influencing you. It's just there. But what you're experiencing is that subtle contact with Shiv Baba. We are so focused Let your mind and his mind link, and the light, the energy begins to come in. And it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You're locked on to the mind of God. And the things of the world are just neutral. As you draw the light and the power into yourself, and you perceive this one, you're with this one, this energy brings you into a very beautiful, blissful state. And that energy radiates from you. It fills the mind space. This is pure karma.